goal.
Let me give you another example of this, if you don't mind. I'm going to use another biblical story.
While you were biblicaling, the lights are flickering behind you, almost like God is interacting with us. There's spirits in the room, Jamie. Have you noticed the light flickering? You haven't noticed it? Keep an eye on it.
Hopefully they're the right spirits.
Well, I think they always are.
Yeah. Well, so in the story of Abraham is he's an old man when the story starts.
As soon as you start talking about Abraham, start flickering again. It's going now,
It's one of my tricks, man.
I'm telling you, dude, It's never happened before. This is wild.
So Abraham is like 70 years old when the story starts, and we don't know anything about him. He's completely nondescript. He's a case of failure to launch. So he has rich parents, and he has everything he needs at hand. So he can live the life of a satiated infant. Like he's in the throes of what would you say, materialistic plenty. Okay, and the voice of God comes to him. Now, but it's characterized in a very particular manner. So God comes to Abraham as the call to adventure. And that's a very useful thing to know. So in the Moses story, God comes to Moses as that which attracts his interest and takes him off the beaten path. In the story of Abraham, God comes as the spirit of adventure. And God makes Abraham a deal. It's a very specific deal, and it's the best possible deal. This is the covenant, by the way. This is the covenant. So God tells Abraham, if you leave your zone of comfort, if you remove yourself from your father's tent, if you move away from infantile materialistic satiation and go out into the terrible world, and you do that voluntarily, you have the adventure of your life, this is what will happen. You'll be a blessing to yourself that's genuine. So instead of being racked with self-doubt and being self-conscious and taking yourself apart with guilt and shame, you'll ride the wave of adventure and you'll feel that your life is a blessing. Not only will you feel that, it will be a blessing. That's the first thing that will happen. The second thing will happen is that other people will notice and your name will become renowned, and that will be valid. You'll be a blessing to other people in that regard. Your name will be upheld. So you'll stand out among your peers, but in a justifiable manner that's a consequence of your own intrinsic merit. The third thing that'll happen is that you'll have the opportunity to establish something permanent. For Abraham, it's a dynasty, right? He's offered the possibility of being the father of nations. And the fourth thing that happens is you'll do it in a way that's of cardinal benefit to everyone. And so what happens in that story, this is so cool. It's so remarkable. It's the answer to the selfish gene, by the way, as well. So what this story does is it takes the call to adventure, which is the instinct that makes children move out into the world. It's the spirit that you encourage if you're a good father. It lines that up and it says, if you follow that and let it pull you out of your zone of comfort, your life will be a blessing to you. Your reputation will grow. You'll establish something permanent, and you'll do that in a way that's good for everyone. Right? So that's a hell of a good deal. And that's the story of Abraham. If you look at God in the story of Abraham and you say, do you believe in that God? What you're asking, even though you might not know it, is, do you believe that there is a call to adventure and that following that call will not only integrate you, but serve society in the highest possible manner? And that's a pretty straightforward question. It has very little to do with anything that's even vaguely superstitious. Like, is that call there? You certainly reward it in your children if you have the least bit of sense. This is what happens to Abraham. So he has a series of adventures after he decides that he's going to go out in the world. And every adventure is marked by the erection of a sacrificial altar and a recommitment of his upward aim. Now, there's two reasons for that. One is that he reminds himself that he's aiming upward and he's on an adventure. And the second is he admits to himself that with every transformation of character, something has to be sacrificed. So, now I'm curious about this in your own life, right? So you started obsessively committing to martial arts. What did you have to give up to do that?
Social life.
Okay.
Yeah.
What else?
That's basically it. I was a kid.
Okay, social life.
I didn't really have responsibilities other than school, so I had to leave from school and go right to training.
Okay, so there's an emergent idea in that story of adventure-led transformation that with every profound transformation of character, something that's not appropriate has to be let go of. That's why, by the way, Abraham's story culminates in the sacrifice of his son. Because the sacrifices get higher in value as the developmental progression upward continues. And that's basically the story of individual development, right? Follow the call of adventure, aim upward, continually remind yourself of your fundamental goal, and then let go of everything that isn't appropriate as you transform forward. So Abraham ends up with a new name because of doing that. That's how different he becomes in the course of his adventure. It's like Jacob. Jacob becomes Israel, and Abram becomes Abraham, because the consequence of him following the pathway of adventure, the calling, is a transformation that's so complete it's as if he's a different person. And those stories are maps of that transformative process. So they culminate in the Christian view of things with the ultimate sacrificial offering. So that's the idea that lurks in the New Testament, is that the ultimate in transformation is brought about by your willingness to put absolutely everything on the line, no matter what. Right. And that's a very different view of the religious enterprise than something like defense against death anxiety. Right. It's the ultimate adventure, and that's the willingness to welcome everything about life that's terrible and painful and malevolent, to welcome that with open arms, to accept that. And that's predicated on a deeper idea even, which is that sacrifice is the basis of community, which is exactly right. Because you have to give up something to be in relationship to the future and to other people.
Right.
Right. So the biblical corpus is an examination of, what would you say, levels of sacrifice moving downward to the ultimate possible level of sacrifice. So in the Abrahamic story, Abraham is requested by God to offer up his son. Right. Now he gets him back. The threat isn't carried through. And what does that mean? It means, first of all, that everything in your life, no matter what it is, including your relationships, should be made subservient to the highest possible aim. It also means that a good father sacrifices his children to what's highest. That's the offering of your child to the world, the faithful offering of your child to the world. And that's how that pattern that establishes the dynasty, so Abraham is the father of nations, is established. So human reproduction is way more complex than just sex, far more complex. It's a multi-generational commitment. So now the promise that God makes to Abraham in part is that if you fall into that pattern of maximal adventure and courageous movement forward, that your life is imbued with a meaning that transcends time, and that you embody something like an archetypal and eternal spirit. And that's the spirit of the Father. That's why Abraham understands that he's made contact with the God of his ancestors. And if you're a good father, you have that spirit dwelling within you. And the Christian insistence is that that spirit's identical to the Logos that bears the weight of the world on its shoulders voluntarily. And that's what brings everything into being. Stunning. It's a stunning conceptualization. And I think it's right. It looks right to me. And the idea that sacrifice is the basis of the community, that's just obvious. Like the fact that you're married. So what's the sacrificial gesture there? Well, all other women. That's sacrifice number one. Then it's not about you. It's also not about your wife. It's about the stability of your union across time. And it's about the stability of that union insofar as that's a reliable foundation for your children. So that's sacrificial too. You give up your whims in the present so that the future's stabilized. You give up your immaturity so that your children can thrive. That's all sacrificial.
I was very interested by this because I've looked at every conspiracy theory, moon landing, 9/11, JFK, I mean, all kinds of conspiracies. The one I had never looked at, and now, I'm 58, so I'm like, okay, let me look at this one, is God. And I said, let me see about this God thing. I've never been a religious guy. And so I start reading and I start talking to people. I also found that around me, like a couple of people I was working with, they're all Christians. And not that anyone was ever pushing anything on me. When I asked them questions, they were gladly answered. And there's a lot of stuff written about Jesus. There's a lot written, thousands of years of books. And there's some contemporary stuff such as Evidence Demands a Verdict. And, this just is so much. And I got to tell you, Joe, as sure as I know that Building 7 didn't fall down out of sympathy for Building 1 and 2, God is real. Jesus existed. He was a badass outlaw, and it has changed my outlook on life. It has really changed the way I look at things. And I believe that we can win with God. I know that may sound a little weird coming from me, but I'm all in on this. And, I'm not you may think of someone who believes in God or Jesus as a crazy right-wing nut job, which I'm obviously not. But man, it's powerful stuff when you put prayer into your life. It's really powerful. The Holy Spirit.
I don't think there's anything weird about it at all. I mean, I think there's a reason why it exists, why it's so prevalent in so many cultures. It helps people.
It's about love.
Yeah,
it's all about love.
Yeah. What do you think Jesus' role was? Who do you think he was?
Well, he was literally the Son of God, and he was on the earth to teach, and he wandered. I mean, he was an outlaw. He did some crazy shit. He overturned the tax tables, and he really railed against a lot of stuff.
Why do you think, based on what information that you have, why do you think that he existed?
Jesus had to die after teaching us how to live a good life and how to be a good person, which is all about love, and that was to absolve us of our sins, which is kind of a cool out. So everyone's a sinner, everyone's fucked up, everyone's flawed, but you are forgiven for that as long as you try to be better. I mean, that's literally every book in the Bible is about. Like I was reading this morning, I forget what it was, but it's like Jesus said, be quick to listen, slow to answer, and slow to get angry. And I took that here, because I remember last time I was here, which was over a year ago, and a lot of people said, dude, you're a fucking asshole. You keep interrupting Joe. And I did. And you even said, calm down, Adam, calm down. You're excited to talk.
But that's just normal excitedness. You're not being an asshole.
But it's better if I listen. It makes everything better. So it's just small things like that. But ultimately, it's 100% about love and knowing that it can be beaten. This evil in the world can be fought against. In fact, it's probably already done. And I'm just new to this, Joe, so I can't answer everything. But I love studying it. I love reading. It's fascinating material. And there's so much there. It's really fascinating.
A person being the actual Son of God, I would need a lot of evidence to believe that.
Evidence Demands a Verdict would be a great book to read. But just as I know that JFK was assassinated, and I really believe the CIA was involved because it's been written. I've just read documents. So when you look into the Bible and everything that's been written about the Bible, that's 100 million times more has been written about that, and it's survived all these years. So I'm just someone who reads.
Writes about The Shining, and a bunch of people review the writing of The Shining and write about The Shining. It doesn't mean that The Shining actually happened. Just because so many people are writing about this particular religion doesn't mean that there was a person.
But they haven't written about.
Doesn't mean they weren't. I'm not saying they were. I'm not saying I know. But I'm saying it doesn't mean that man was the Son of God.
I'm just telling you, my process is when I investigate things, and to me it was a conspiracy theory. Like, I'm just going to start reading, and I read for 3 weeks until I gave up and said, I can keep reading, but all the evidence just is thrown at me over and over and over again. If I'm going to believe certain things about JFK or 9/11 or whatever, which I've read as much as I can, but there's not that much. It's just for my own conscience. I have to, if I'm going to believe that after reading 50 years of documentation versus thousands of years of documentation.
But it's thousands of years of documentation of a story. It's interesting that some people would rather not get there and rather be in a shitty, depressed state as long as they're not duped. but you've been duped by life.
Of course.
Because your life sucks. I know a lot of atheists that are super depressed.
The idea is not that God fixes everything. The idea is if you can believe in it and can put yourself in a mindset, I'm just looking at a little abstract now.
Yes.
You put yourself in a mindset that things can happen, that miracles do happen, that things do impact your life, and that you look at things in a different way. You're not always completely fucked up about this is not happening for me or that's not happening.
Do you think it's like psychological software that you can run? Like your belief in God. Do you think that's like psychological software that you could just run and they're like, ooh, look, everything's smoother?
No, it's not. No, because everything isn't smoother, but you at least don't freak out when shit isn't smooth.
Right. I don't mean it in a derogatory way.
No, I know.
A negative way.
I know.
What I mean is like, is that why it's effective? That
Well,
it's like a natural thing that you could run and it's been honed over time. It only makes sense that it
Well,
has
yes.
been,
Well, here you
right?
go. I love this.
So it just sort of slides.
What is the software?
into-
What is the code? It's the Bible. It is the gospel, Scripture. That is, if you want to look at it that way, it is the code that you run in your brain, and it does things for you.
Yeah.
So that's a way of looking at it. And that's a kind of a good way, actually. I hadn't thought of that one. I like that.
Yeah. Like
I like that.
like a psychological software.
Sure.
But the problem is, if he was really good at it and really successful in a time when people were not very sophisticated, he could probably pull that off. And then when he dies, everybody would say he was the Son of God.
Sure.
And we don't know.
No.
So how would you know that this guy who lived 2,000 plus years ago
That's why.
is actually the Son of
That's
God?
why I call myself a believer.
Because you just believe.
Yeah.
Well,
and I've seen what it has done for my own life.
what does it do for your own life when you believe?
It makes me a very happy person. Prayer does work, not if you're asking for stuff for yourself, but I've experienced, it's not really just the miracles that I've experienced, but it makes me happy. Good things have been happening.
So you just find it effective. It works for you.
Of course.
And
yeah.
so you're just saying
Yeah.
this has helped your life. How can you possibly
you can
prove...
never get to the end, of course not.
Right.
But
you can never prove. You could prove that people believed it.
Yeah,
But how could you
you're
prove
correct.
that someone was actually the Son of God?
No,
Or are we all?
of course we're
So
all
then,
God.
of course he
We're
was.
100% God.
So if he was
He was-
one of us,
he was the teacher,
then he
though.
was the Son of God because we're all children of
I'm
God.
with that. I'm with
right?
that, yeah.
Maybe that's the answer. Maybe it's a puzzle. Jesus.
That's right. Help me, Jesus. Help me, Jesus.
Help me, Jesus. You know, like subtitled movies, you feel like you're a smarter person watching a movie where you're reading it as well.
Yeah. And there's something about the written word that's like, it's a pretty interesting thing to throw into the mix. I know when I first started it was kind of confusing, but then I got really good at it. And I think, especially with something like the Passion that I did, the written word was very important because it was, you got all those books, the Bible, you've got the different Gospels and stuff that people are quite familiar with. Half the time, they didn't even need to read the subtitles. They could look at it and know what was going on.
That was a crazy movie because it was a great movie, but
Yeah.
it seemed like there was resistance to that movie.
Oh, yeah. No, there was...
Which I thought was very strange. There was like Hollywood resistance to that movie. Like people didn't like that you were making it. It seemed like.
Yeah, there was a lot of opposition to it, and I don't know. I think if you ever hit on that subject matter, you're going to get people going, because
Of course.
it's big subject matter, and it's like And my contention is, when I was making it, it was like, you're making this film, and the idea was that we're all responsible for this, that his sacrifice was for all mankind, and that for all our ills and all the things in our fallen nature, it was a redemption. So, and I believe that, I actually am, I was born into a Catholic family. I'm very Christian in my beliefs, so I do actually believe this stuff to the full. So depicting that was an honor, but it was also, you got the daylights beat out of you for it.
Yeah, because there's resistance, first of all, from secular Hollywood, where for whatever reason, Christianity is the one religion that you're allowed to disparage.
Yeah.
Christianity is the one religion where people, all these progressive, open-minded, leftist people, they'll embrace all these different religions until it comes to Christianity. And for whatever reason, that represents like white male, whatever it represents, colonialism, whatever it represents, it's negative.
Yeah, sure, it's gotten a bad rap. And people do feel free to beat up on it. Mm-hmm. Even I do when I see it's like, when it's not fair, or when I think it's off.
Right.
Like, when they appoint some cardinal in some diocese and he's been covering up for like people who are child molesters.
Yes.
Or, like Theodore McCarrick or Cardinal Wuerl or those kind of guys. I mean,
Or the Pope.
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. I'm
Benedict.
not Benny. Well, he was covering up, but so is the guy now.
Is he really?
Well, yeah. It's not great.
I thought he was like the more progressive Pope.
Oh, he's very progressive, yes,
But he's covering up for stuff as well. Well, they all are. I mean, it's a dark institution in a lot of ways because it's history.
Well, the institution, it was instituted by Christ, but that doesn't mean that it can't be flawed. And there's a school of thought that says it isn't what it purports to be anymore. It's moved away from what it was intended to be and what it is. Almost, there's a guy called Bishop Vigano who says it's a counterfeit parallel church. And it's running an entirely different religion. I actually don't adhere to a post-conciliar church. I adhere.
Can you define what that means?
Okay. There was an event that happened in the 60s. First, there was an event in the Vatican where they elected John the 23rd Pope, right, in 1958. I was 2 years old, right? He was elected, and there was a very funny thing that happened in the conclave. Usually there's white and black smoke that goes out of the chimneys to tell you, we have a pope, habemus papam, and the white smoke came out. And everybody cheered, and they went crazy. And then about a half an hour later, black smoke came out. That never in history has that happened, that the white smoke came out. And then the black smoke came out.
White smoke means we found a new pope. Black smoke means no pope.
That's right. They'd have votes, or there'd be one reason or another they'd have a round in the conclave, and black smoke would come out many times maybe. Maybe it would take 2 weeks. But never was it known that white smoke came out, then black smoke came out.
So what was the scenario?
That somebody was elected, and that maybe something else happened. And he was pushed aside and someone else was put in. So it was
power struggle.
Some kind of power struggle. And, of course, the man who came out was a man called Angelo Roncalli, and he was John the 23rd. Now, it's interesting to note that never had a pope taken the name of another pope ever before in history. But this man took the name of a known anti-pope from the 15th century that Cosimo de' Medici put in there as his own man. I'll get you in the chair, and then everything will be rosy. Everything will go good for business, whatever he was putting him in there for, some corrupt reason. But, and there have been corrupt men in that place before. I mean, there's Alexander VI and Julius II and Sixtus IV. I mean, some of these guys are, they're not saints. So he took the name of a known anti-pope from the 5th century who actually said, yes, I'm an anti-pope. Sorry, I'm not the right guy, because there was more than one, and he confessed to being, and he wanted to, square things with the Almighty, I guess, so he confessed to being an anti-pope. And so he took the same name as that guy, John the 23rd. So it's interesting, don't you think? I mean, why would he do that?
Well, whenever you have that kind of power, like I'm sure you've been to the Vatican, right?
Yeah.
It's stunning.
Yes, it's huge.
It's so crazy. When you're walking around, you see just the massive amount, just the dollar value in the art that they possess.
Yeah.
It's fucking insane.
It's crazy, yeah. And, it's a very small country. It's a country.
Yeah, it's a country inside of a small city.
Yeah.
Because Rome's not the biggest city.
No.
And then it's got a country inside the city.
Yeah.
With walls around it.
Sure.
And you can't extradite people.
Yeah, pretty weird.
How convenient.
Yeah. Even Ratzinger, he didn't drive from the Vatican to the other place. He flew.
Ooh.
And it was only a little while, because who knows why. I don't know.
Well, he was wanted.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, he had done, one of the things that he had done was he had moved a priest that had molested 100 kids, and he moved him to some new place where he molested deaf kids.
Yeah, yeah. Boy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
That's the dirtiest, most evil practice that the Catholic Church has been accused of.
I think so, and many institutions as well,
Yeah.
but that is a very bad one. And I think it's all part and parcel of the same corruption that crept in. And when you asked what's the difference between pre-Vatican II, so Vatican II happened, and of course they took the church and they reformed it, and they changed things in it. And it didn't necessarily agree with everything that went before it.
Mm.
And up to that point, yeah, you could find it agreed with itself. But all of a sudden, you got something else, to the point where now, I mean, we got a pope that brought a South American idol into the church to worship.
Really?
He did. The Pachamama. He bought the South American, and he got.
I don't know what that is.
It's kind of like a South American god, Pachamama.
Why would he do that?
Good question. But he did.
Did he have an explanation for why he did it?
Yeah, it's kind of a weasel-worded thing of like, oh, all religions are just as good as one another. But, if that's his contention.
He shouldn't be the Pope.
No. I mean,
how can you be the Pope if you say all religions are just as good?
Yeah, we all worship, So, yeah, there's the Pachamama. There you go.
So he brought that in.
Yeah, into the Vatican. Then the hierarchy even worshipped. They had a ceremony around it outside.
What?
So, well, that constitutes apostasy.
Yeah.
That's an apostasy move, all right?
Worshipping false gods.
Yeah. That's number one on the Mosaic hit list. You know? Moses goes up on the mountain. He comes back down. People are worshiping a golden calf.
Yeah.
It's that.
Yeah.
So you can't do that. And for me, that's a departure from... that's called apostasy.
Right.
That's a falling away from it. And the very nature of apostasy means that you have to be part of it to fall away from it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an inside job.
Ah. So what do you think there's a motive behind these things?
I don't think probably.
What do you think it is?
I don't know. But it isn't good. I think we're looking at a world where and this is in the next film I'm going to do, I'm going to try and tackle this question. That there are big realms, spiritual realms. There's good, there's evil, and they are slugging it out for the souls of mankind. And my question is, why are we even important? Little old flawed humanity, why are we important in that process where the big realms are slugging it out over us? And I think there's bigger things at play here. And institutions that purport to touch on the divine are necessarily going to be affected by that slugfest that's going on between good and evil.
Right.
And
sometimes good gives up ground.
Yeah. And maybe not on purpose.
So this story that you want to tell about good and evil, do you have a script, or is it just a thing in your head? What is it?
Yeah, it's the resurrection story, but it's not linear, because you can't really. It's hard to understand, so it's got to be put in a framework where you answer a few other questions as well. And you have to juxtapose the event itself against everything else so that it makes some kind of sense in a bigger picture, which is a hard thing to do. And it took my brother and I and a guy called Randall Wallace, plus my brother and I, took us 6-7 years to write it.
So are you doing this with historians as well? Are you trying to make it...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, historical stuff. Well, I regard the Gospels as history. It's verifiable history. Some people say, oh, it's a fairy tale. He never existed, but he did. And there are other accounts, verifiable historical accounts outside the biblical ones that also bear this up, that yes, he did exist. And the other aspect of that is that all the evangelists, the apostles who went out there, every single one of those guys died rather than deny their belief. And nobody dies for a lie. Nobody.
Right.
So that's part of what I'm doing. It's like showing nobody dies for a lie.
Yeah. Well, the resurrection is the one that is the most difficult for people to swallow.
Yes.
That's the one that requires the most faith.
The most faith and the most belief, yeah, resurrection.
Yeah.
Who gets back up 3 days later after he gets murdered in public, who gets back up under his own power. Buddha didn't do that shit,
Right.
you know. So,
You believe that was a real event?
yeah, I do. Yeah.
What brought you to that belief? Is this something that you've always had, or is it something you studied it and you've come to this conclusion because of the historical accounts? And
Yes. I think as a child, you know, one accepts things on faith because, you know, you're raised by people who are nice to you and they believe it. And my dad was a pretty smart guy. He was like Mensa smart, you know, like real smart. Like back in 1968, he won Jeopardy, right? And then
Really?
And then they brought all the Jeopardy winners back, and he played all the winners, and he beat all of them too. So he had a mind like a steel trap, and his memory was practically photographic. My memory is pornographic, but it's like his was like, I don't have that kind of mind.
right.
But I'm more like, he did math, and you know, I can't add. But so as a child, you learn these things and you accept them on faith. And I still have that faith, but as I got older, I came to it through intellect and through reading and putting things together in accounts, and then occurrences like in my own life, you know. I mean, just recently they verified the Shroud of Turin. Have you seen that?
I've been reading about it, and I know that there's some contention, there's some discussion and debate about it, but they used to think that it was only a couple hundred years old.
Yeah.
And now they've changed that.
Yeah, they said no, it's back then.
They also don't understand how it was made, which to me is very fascinating because it's not paint. It's not. They don't know what caused the image itself and how that technology would have even been available.
It wasn't, no.
A couple thousand years ago.
An intense light, I mean, atomic, to leave almost like a photographic imprint on a piece of cloth.
Yeah.
How do you perceive that force? Is it just energy, or do you anthropomorphize it into like a being that you can, you know, recognize and think about?
Right. But there's kind of no denying, at least from a recognizable, if you had to like look, how do you quantify it? How do you measure it? There's no denying that evil takes place, you know? Like you could come up with any number of massacres throughout history, and you say that's an evil act.
There's no question.
Right.
Right.
So evil is a thing that's real.
If there's good, there's evil.
Right.
Yeah.
And then there have been many, many things that people have done. You're like, wow, good exists in the world. There is still good. So we know both those things are real things. We just don't know what's the root of them all. And are there really angels and demons, or are those the scapegoats for this bizarre dance of good and evil that just exists in the world?
Mm-hmm. Well, if it weren't, for Adam and Eve eating the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, there wouldn't be any perception of good and evil. It'd just be true or false. Which is the reason that Adam and Eve were expelled from the garden, because in the beginning, it was they were living in a world of either truth or falsehood.
You're right.
And after eating the fruit of the difference between good and evil, they became opinionated. Oh, that's good, I like it. That's bad, I don't like it. But the issue of true or false got became muddled.
Yeah.
And they no longer were fit inhabitants of the Garden of Eden, of paradise.
What's your take on Lilith?
Well, Lilith. Well, there's no mention of her in the Bible per se, but there's a lot of mention of her in the rabbinic literature that sprung up after the Bible. Yeah. The story is that I think after Cain killed Abel, that Adam. No. Was it that after that? I think it was after Adam and Eve were expelled from the garden. That they stopped having sex. So Adam, then was just sleeping, with Lilith, and they spawned innumerable demons as a result of their relationship. Yeah, and after a while, Adam and Eve, reconciled, and they got the things together again. Yeah. But Lilith, plays a role in the understanding of evil in the world, like it's the result of the spawn of Lilith.
What do you think Lilith was originally?
Who was
if it was a thing?
Yeah. I don't know. Well, that's called, midrash. It's the explication of the Bible, by the rabbis. So it's what's called extra biblical.
Ah.
Yeah, and I've only looked into extra biblical stuff to a certain extent.
What's the source of that stuff?
The imagination, and I think the surrounding environment, societies, culture, influenced by the Greeks, the Sumerians, the Akkadians, the Hittites. There's a lot of accumulation of other cultures onto interpreting the stories that occur in the text. A lot of fanciful things and entertaining things, like, for example, Lilith is the source of the demonic entities out there.
Yeah, I found out about Lilith like 6 months ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'd never even heard about it. Do you remember when we found out about Lilith? Somebody brought it up on a show, right?
Yeah, who brought it up, I'm wondering.
I don't remember, but I was like, what? Who's Lilith?
Yeah, was it Jordan Peterson?
It could have been.
Yeah, but
very
because
possibly.
he's a keen student of the Bible.
Very possibly. It was him. I do not remember, though. But I remember thinking, like, wow. Like, and then the original story. Like, so when you're talking about the biblical translations of the Adam and Eve story that we're all accustomed to, it's all a watered down sort of, or a strange translated version of the ancient Hebrew. But you've read the actual ancient Hebrew version of it. Like, what did you get out of it? Like, what did you...
Well, most of the translations of the Hebrew Bible are quite good. Like, the King James Version, it's very accurate. Yeah, it's a bit, stilted.
Is anything missing in the translation from when you read it in ancient Hebrew, or do you think it's pretty clear?
It's fairly one-to-one correspondence between the Hebrew words and the English translation. Certain things are interpreted through a Christian lens because the Christians wrote the King James Bible translation.
Right.
Yeah. But the words and the grammar and the narratives, they're pretty much accurate. Yeah. They spent a lot of time working on painstaking translations. So there was a responsibility to do it accurately.
Imagine that story, like trying to pass that one down for 1,000 years.
Yeah.
So there was only two people, and then there was an apple.
Right.
And a snake talked Eve into eating that apple, and everything got fucked.
Yeah. It's a very strange story, isn't it?
Very strange story. What do you think it really was all about?
I think there were two people named Adam and Eve.
For real?
As if they were real.
What do you mean by that?
Well, if you imagine that there was an Adam and Eve and you visualize the garden they were in and the snake and their interactions, there you have it.
So you think the biblical interpretation is a literal recalling of actual events that took place?
No. I don't think that. Well, it's like if you smoke DMT and you enter into this world, it's true, it's overwhelmingly convincing, it's got its own laws, its own system. Things are regular. Like certain things happen, certain interactions take place. Yeah, and you're there. You're convinced it's real, and you interact with it to the best of your ability. So I think that's the case with the narratives in the text. It's not. It isn't a matter of interpreting what they mean, as much as understanding what happened.
Boy, that's obscure. So it's not interpreting what they mean, but understanding what happened.
Yeah, what did the snake say to Eve?
So a snake really talked to Eve, though.
It was as if a snake talked to Eve.
As if.
Yeah.
So perhaps a psychedelic experience, perhaps an altered state of consciousness.
No, I think it was a case of a woman standing near a tree and a snake coming up to her and saying certain things, and they have a conversation.
For real.
As if it were real. Well, the stories have been told so many times.
Right, that's the problem.
And, they seem... Well, if you...
Seems like they're blaming everything on Eve, too, which is like a little suspect. I like to hear her side of it.
Well, the one who got punished without even having a chance to explain himself was the snake. So God asks Adam what happened, and he asks Eve what happened, and he just lays it on the snake.
Right.
Yeah.
And the snake's like, I didn't tell her anything. I can't even talk. This lady wanted to eat that apple, and she blamed me.
Well, back then snakes could talk. or in that world, snakes talk.
How so?
Well, they were the wisest of all the animals in the garden. So, they could speak.
Right, but you speak of these things as if, like we're talking about when you go to the zoo, the monkeys swing from the vines, it's normal. Snakes talk.
Well, it's a bit of a paradox. Like if you,
Let me ask you this.
so if you treat those stories as if they were real, you're opening yourself up to this universe of Adam and Eve were in the garden. Then they had Cain and Abel. Cain killed Abel. Then Cain had children, and his children begot the 70 nations. And then there was a flood because mankind was bad.
Mm-hmm.
Noah and his family survived. They all spoke one language afterwards. There was on a tower. There was Nimrod. There was Abraham. There was Isaac and Jacob. So it's this world which seems to be quite coherent, quite consistent. It all ties together. It's quite consistent from book to book, from narrative to narrative. It is a different way of looking at the Bible. It isn't dogma like you have to do this or you have to do that, or it isn't like a Jungian archetype or a psychodynamic wish fulfillment. It's this world that that is articulated, spelled out in a very ancient, very influential text.
So, is it also possible that something completely different took place, but that over time and over a oral tradition of who knows how many hundreds of years before they actually wrote it down, and then writing it down, that you're getting a version of the actual event that's very different than what really took place, but you think about it like the version in the scripture. And if you think about it in the version of the scripture, are you thinking about it like as if this was an event as recorded, or are you thinking this is a representation of an archetype or some sort of moment in human history that they're trying to recollect and pass down?
Well, if you
that makes
consider,
any
yeah, kind of, yeah. Well, if you consider, the text to be prophetically received, prophecy is communication between the divine and man, and the text was prophetically received. In fact, Philo of Alexandria, one of Terence McKenna's heroes, used to say, the most accurate historians were the prophets. Because they heard it, directly, from the initiator of the event, the witness of the event, the one who could understand the event in the huge context. So it's a prophetically received, text, which means it contains information received from a spiritual sort of level, which you would think is a universal field of sorts.
How much have you ever paid attention, if at all, to any of that ancient Sumerian stuff, like the Anunnaki and...
Some. Yeah, I watched this really great documentary a few years back. Yeah, but I wouldn't consider myself as knowing much about it.
Right. That, to me, is one of the weirder origin stories.
Yeah. So what is that origin story? On my recall, it's quite fascinating, but not the details.
Well, there's multiple versions of it. First of all, the story of this, the fantastic story, is told by Zecharia Sitchin. So Zecharia Sitchin, who wrote The 12th Planet, and he wrote several other books. He was a biblical scholar and a linguist, and he spent a lot of time studying the ancient Sumerian text, the cuneiform. And what he believes is that it tells a story of an ancient relationship between a race of beings on a far distant planet that's in an elliptical orbit, and it comes near Earth every 3,600 years, and that they had engineered human beings out of lower primates. They had accelerated our evolution, and that all of what we know about the cosmos, all of what we know about, they have these detailed, I don't see the ancient tablets that have a detailed map of the solar system from 6,000 years ago.
Right,
They
okay.
have the sun in the center and all the moon, and they have these really enormous beings. And these enormous beings were supposed to be these things called the Anunnaki.
Okay.
And the literal translation is those from heaven to earth came.
Uh-huh.
It's one of the weirder, like if you
Anunnaki.
love a great science fiction version of the origin story of humans, it's the most fun one.
Yeah, it brings to mind, the sons of God, the B'nai Elohim, which occur in the story of the flood and Noah.
The Nephilim, too.
Yeah, the Nephilim, the Rephaim, they were huge. They were giants.
Yes. Yeah.
Men of renown.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they intermarried, or they had sex with the daughters of man, and from them came a race.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that story is interpreted or perceived through the lens of the Hebrew Bible too.
Really?
Yeah. Well, that is a story in the text. Before the flood, is the B'nai Elohim, come down to earth. They have intercourse with, the daughters of man, and out of those relationships, comes this race of giants.
That's the most fun one.
Yeah, yeah.
Isn't it?
Well, they all got swept away in the flood. So that's an interesting. Turn of events.
Well, if you interpret the flood as the Younger Dryas impact theory, which created the flood, which lines up.
Right, that does line up.
Yeah, it lines up time-wise, lines up with how it would go down. Yeah, just no evidence of giants. That's the only thing we're missing. If they found some giants.
Well, in the meantime, you can assume that the giants were real, and understand their origin, what they were like, what they did, why they did it, what the results were.
If categories dissolve, especially fundamental ones, the culture is dissolving because the culture is a structure of category. That's what it is.
Right.
So, and in fact, culture is a structure of category that we all share. So we see things the same way. Well, that's why we can talk. I mean, not exactly the same way, because then we'd have nothing to talk about. But roughly speaking, we have a bedrock of agreement. That's the Bible, by the way. So I just walked through the Museum of the Bible in Washington. That was very cool. It's a very cool museum.
So the structure, that's what the Bible
Yeah, it's what
provides.
I figured out. I just figured this out this week. So it was a cool thing to walk through because it's chronological. They have one floor which is the history of the Bible. But it's not exactly that. It's really what it is the history of the book. Now, in many ways, the first book was the Bible. I mean, literally, because at one point there was only one book. Like, as far as our Western culture is concerned, there was one book. And for a while, literally, there was only one book. And that book was the Bible. And then before it was the Bible, it was it was scrolls and it was writings on papyrus. But we were starting to aggregate written text together. And it went through all sorts of technological transformations. And then it became books that everybody could buy, the book everybody could buy. And the first one of those was the Bible. And then it became all sorts of books that everybody could buy. But all those books, in some sense, emerged out of that underlying book. And that book itself, the Bible isn't a book, it's a library. It's a collection of books. And so what I figured out was, partly because I was talking to my brother-in-law, Jim Keller, who's the world's greatest chip designer and has now designed a chip that's as powerful as the human brain, which is optimized for artificial intelligence learning, by the way. And so I talked to him about that. He said, "You heard of the internet?" I said, "Yeah, Jim, I've heard of the internet." He said, "This is way more revolutionary than that." So in any case, we were talking about meaning in text because we were talking about translation and the problem of understanding text. And Jim said, the meaning of words is coded in the relationship of the words to one another. And the postmodernists make that case, that all meaning is derived from the relationship between words. That's wrong because, well, what about rage? That's not words. And what about moving your hand? That's not words. So it's wrong, but part of it's right because the meaning we derive from the verbal domain is encoded in the relationship between words. So So now then you think, well, let's think about the relationship between words. Well, some words are dependent on other words. Some ideas are dependent on other ideas. The more ideas are dependent on a given idea, the more fundamental that idea is. That's a definition of fundamental. So now imagine you have an aggregation of texts in a civilization. You say, which are the fundamental texts? And the answer is, the texts upon which most other texts depend. And so you'd put Shakespeare way in there in English because so many texts are dependent on Shakespeare's literary revelations. And Milton would be in that category, and Dante would be in that category, at least in translation. Fundamental authors, part of the Western canon, not because of the arbitrary dictates of power, but because those texts influenced more other texts. And then you think about that as a hierarchy, okay, with the Bible at its base, which is certainly the case. Now imagine that's the entire corpus of linguistic production, all things considered. Now how do you understand that? Like literally, how do you understand that? The answer is you sample it by reading and listening to stories and listening to people talk. You sample that whole domain. You build a low resolution representation of that inside you, and then you listen and see through that. And so it isn't that the Bible is true. It's that the Bible is the precondition for the manifestation of truth, which makes it way more true than just true. It's a whole different kind of true. And I think this is not only literally the case, factually, I think it can't be any other way. It's the only way we can solve the problem of perception.
I agree. So just briefly, and you jump in there, Eddie. Let me tell you what my deep research and basically vision is.
Okay.
And vision just means you're like things crystallize, epiphany. To talk about 12 dimensions, 11 known, 12 being omnipresent, so we don't say it actually exists. To say that is arrogant, so I won't say that. But I have had dreams my whole life that come true. And the weirdest thing, like a lady drops a thing of pickles at the store. For 5 years I have the dream, and then one day I'm there and it's the woman in the pickles break. Or I walk around a corner.
When was this?
Particularly when I was a kid, it was more intense.
That is fucking crazy. So for 5 years you had the same dream and then one day it happened?
Yes.
Was it exactly how you dreamt it?
Yes.
Fuck.
For about 6 months I had a dream of a guy in a purple and green striped shirt. And I'm like, why am I walking? Because it's not like normal dreams. It's like you've been taken over. You always get vomit after
lucid, like a lucid dream.
Lucid dream. And I'm walking around like, why am I behind a building? And all of a sudden there's some dude in a purple and green striped shirt and he attacks me. And 6 months later, it happens. And I mean, it happens exactly. So
what do you think is going on? All thoughts of yourself aside, just look at it objectively. What do you think that is?
You could say that it's human programming and basic programming in the brain.
Do you think you're tapping into a timeline that maybe you can't access all the time?
Well, that's what I know it is. I was trying to be...
One of the reasons why you can rant and rave and when you spew out information the way you do, which is very impressive. The way you can talk about things
for 3 hours straight,
and get excited about things. You do the majority of your programs entirely by yourself.
No teleprompter.
But I agree with you. It's not like I'm telling you.
You're doing something unusual. Do you understand that?
I'm not even doing it. It's like a river's going by. There's a turtle. There's a fish. There's a log. That's why it's like random. Like, what is this? What is that exactly?
Right, but that's how you communicate. That's like in the beginning of the thing we were talking about Sandy Hook. I kept trying to slow you down. I was like, I'm not following you down this river. You just hit this one rock. I want to talk about this rock. I want to talk about the next rock. But you just keep going. The way you think about things is you're chaining one thing to the next thing, to the next thing, to the next thing. And for people who are not thinking the way you're thinking, it can be exhausting. Like you're trying to follow what you're saying.
Well, sure, it doesn't even mean I'm right about it all. I'm only seeing the code.
But I'm wondering, because of the fact you're telling me that you had these dreams, it came true exactly the way you dreamt them. I know you're not full of shit. You're not a liar. I've known you for a long time. If that really did happen to you, if this is your real life experience, I want to know what the fuck that is. Are you on the periphery You have your finger on a membrane that maybe other people can't totally touch, where occasionally, just occasionally, you get a little peek through and you get to see the other side. Even if it's only once or twice in your life. Who's to say that what you're experiencing by being able to see these things that manifest themselves realistically in the future, that this isn't what human beings will have 5 years from now or 100 years from now?
Well, sure, exactly.
Right?
We think of like a cell phone being magic, aren't
We think we're all the same. That's the thing. We think we're all the same, but we're not all the same. We're not all the same in our ability to talk. You can talk for a lot longer about a lot of different things than I do. Eddie Bravo could talk about jiu-jitsu better than both of us, and he's a musician. So you and I both suck at music, right? So there's certain things that people can do that you can't do.
Well, let me try to describe it. And they'll use this against me, but notice they don't touch it because it's their whole religion and they can't stand up talking about it. By the time I was like 3 years old, I would have this dream that God has, because God knows everything, is this super intelligent, omnipresent, unlimited dimensions, but God doesn't know where God came from. So just like we're trying to find out where we came from, God is like a virtual reality simulation as well. And God is constantly running every program, every operation, turning evil loose, good loose, everything. So I would have these dreams. But the earliest memories, like 2, 3 years old, where I would fly out to the edge of infinity, and it was a continual message: find out where we came from, find out what it is, and it would just be this big, giant, spinning black vortex, like a black hole, and then I would have to go into that, trying to figure out what was going on, and it was the same thing, and so it's this incredible frustration. So then growing up and dealing with things and questioning politics and questioning all these other areas, and then having dreams that come true exactly, and like knowing what's going to happen before it happens, and then questioning it, and then it never being wrong, be like weird, not bright, like crazy stuff, man. Like just so much stuff where it becomes like you can't even deal with it. You like dial it out, and then you just reach that point where you don't even know what's real anymore because it's so crazy. But then you see like the mathematics of the whole system, and you know how it works. It's not like you're some schizophrenic. You talk about it, you deal with it, and it actually works. Like now when you fight the system, you automatically know what to do. Like when you talk about something the president word for word repeats, Trump, that's what freaks him out. Word for word, whole speeches, like whole things. And I'm not on a power trip. That's what they flipped out about at the CIA and everywhere else. And they're like, well, Jones is like connected to Trump, and I think Trump's like an idiot savant.
What does that have to do with the speech? Explain that. Trump's speech? I'm trying to follow you.
I don't even know.
That's the thing. It's hard to follow you sometimes.
Because
we were talking about God.
You were talking about Trump's speech abilities?
Well, even before that, he was talking about God.
So God. God knows everything except where God came from.
That's a good soundbite right there.
Do you think that God is just like every other system that we see? Like, think of this. There's no one.
God is the most advanced.
There's no one
AI.
bird. There's no one bird that's running all the birds. There's no one person that's running all the people. It's all chaos. Even if we elect someone, if half the fucking people hate them, everybody's in chaos. They're trying constant power struggle.
Are you still on?
Do you think that God
Trump
is
still good?
decentralized? Do you think that the idea of God is decentralized? That maybe God is a real thing, but God's not one person. God is literally all
free
of the
will.
organisms. God is not just free will. God is consciousness. It's all the organisms. It's every fucking technological innovation.
No, I think God is intelligence.
All the things.
No, I agree with you. And that's not some New Age thing. New Age is a counterfeit, Joe. I agree with
counterfeit?
you. No, I'm saying a counterfeit of what's real.
Oh.
Because they'll say, oh, God is everything. It's true. God is experiencing consciousness through all of us. There's
when Mike, where I have a hard time saying that I know this, I could say God might be decentralized. I could say God might just be just like every other organism on the planet. It's just something that's moving in a certain direction, trying to protect itself and trying to procreate and trying to advance and trying to innovate and trying to be better than it was yesterday. That's what everything is doing. Every fucking animal that started out as a single-celled organism is trying to survive.
Except they didn't create themselves.
Well, it's not necessarily that it didn't create itself, but something created it slowly but surely.
Well, let's say this.
Through the process of evolution and mutation.
This is we keep going. I want to keep going for hours. We should do an epic podcast, but the point is, we should not give up.
Don't give up.
The point is, there is a pro-human future and a pro-free will future, and the globalists are an anti-human, anti-free will future. So all I know is to swim towards the light.
This is a
I'm
good
for
point.
a pro-human future.
I had Rep Luna on the podcast.
Oh, yeah.
And she
Yeah,
was
yeah.
the one who really got me to read the Book of Enoch.
Dude, she's digging in.
Oh yeah,
she's digging in. Yeah,
she's all in on the UFOs.
I know she is.
I don't know what they
I
tell
know,
her.
yeah.
I mean, is she useful to them? You know,
Hey,
the whole thing
maybe,
is weird.
though. Maybe.
Maybe
It's hard to know.
But when I started reading it, now, if that was included in the Bible, if they had, because it really was rabbis that
Yeah.
decided that it didn't jive with the Torah, right?
Right.
And so they said, no, this one's
Can't
too
have
crazy.
this, yeah.
If that was in the Bible, and that's what we were taught,
Things would be different.
can you imagine like
Things would
Sunday
be
church,
different,
the
bro.
Watchers came down and made it.
yeah.
But meanwhile, that is in
Yeah.
the same area of Qumran, written down as the book of Isaiah. So all these things that are included in the Bible, that's there. It's
Yeah.
all in the same word. Why are we ignoring some of it? Like, that's really crazy. Why ignoring the stuff that seems the most kooky?
I think that there's probably maybe disagreements because I mean, there's so much change for the biblical canon from all of these different councils, like the Council of Nicaea, all these different censorings and changing of the Bible. It's probably personal issue. It could be something as simple as just someone who personally did not believe that. It's like, that's bullshit. Remove that. That's not real. There's no way there were giants. But I love how at the beginning of the Bible it's like there were giants in those times and the times before.
Yeah.
Anyway.
All over.
Moving on,
Bible.
never mention it again, like
Yeah.
in any sort of real context, other than like David and Goliath in a few situations. But no, I really am starting to wonder if there was a giant race that was on
I
this
think
planet,
there was.
dude. I really do.
The Native American depictions alone.
Yeah,
There's too many stories of enormous men that they had to kill.
yeah. And
Yeah.
their history, their oral tradition goes so far back.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean,
so
imagine
far
we're
back.
talking 10,000.
Yeah.
Now that we know that human beings lived in North America 22,000
Exactly.
plus years ago, right? So the fossilized footprints that they found in New Mexico, so that's 22,000 years. So imagine if 22,000 years ago these things were a real thing. How many of them have you found? You haven't found any bones of humans from 22,000 years ago in North America, have
Right.
you? No, right? So why?
Exactly.
Does the Smithsonian have them, these motherfuckers? If they really do have a giant down there,
Can
you
I
imagine?
think they probably do, Joe.
can you
Do I
imagine if
think
there's
they
like there's a tomb that you have to go into? It's like a vault. The guy cranks open the vault.
It's
and
like
you
the
see
history version of Area 51.
you see a fucking head the size of this table, and you're like, what?
That's what we're dealing with. That's what
What?
we're dealing with. Yeah.
Yeah, we got to kill him off.
Maybe.
Which totally makes sense. Why
Yeah.
would you let that motherfucker live?
Right.
You got a 10-foot tall, 12-foot tall,
That's a problem.
2,000-pound human
Yeah.
that eats people.
That is a problem. I wonder, I always get this because, like, the Watchers themselves are never described as giant beings.
Right.
I wonder where the giant came into the equation.
Well, isn't it us
genetically.
compared to them?
Maybe
Let's
because
look at
maybe
this.
there were slight aliens, like alien greys or
Sure.
something, and
Well, look at the description of the Nephilim, how they destroyed everything.
Yeah.
Like, they created this thing that consumed everything, destroyed everything, including mankind. Like, what does that sound like?
it sounds like us.
That sounds like us.
It sounds like us.
Right. And also, like, you're saying mankind. Like, mankind, what are you saying? Are you saying aliens? Are you saying, who wrote this?
Yeah.
Like, what
Yeah,
is
yeah,
mankind?
for
Like,
sure.
what does that term mean? I bet you're not saying man. I bet you're probably using an ancient language to describe whatever the dominant force was at the time that's writing all this down. What are we talking about?
Yeah.
What is these Watchers? They mated with humans? So what are they? And they created something that destroyed everything? What? So, okay, what is that? What are you talking about? And doesn't that sound exactly like humans? Like, what do? We fucking destroy everything.
Yeah.
We destroy everything. We light things on fire. We suck all the fish out of the ocean. We throw our garbage in it. We are so destructive.
Yeah, yeah.
And we're so consuming. We consume. We're one of the only animals that dies because we eat too much.
Yeah. right.
Right? We're one of the only
Exactly.
animals.
Yeah. Well, we are the only example on this planet of the level of intelligence that we have. I mean, it's just phenomenal. I mean, really quite phenomenal when you consider all of the various avenues of evolution that have been given
Right.
the opportunity.
We have a massive leap. Yeah.
Phenomenally, but a leap that has to in some way have been intervened with,
Yes.
in my opinion. I mean, it's such a quantum leap in our ability of cognition and the brain size. I mean, I do find the stoned ape theory very interesting, and the
I do
concept
too.
of using psychedelics, and I think there's a role to play in that for sure. But I just think that when you have such a novel trajectory change from every other creature, every other animal on this planet, that tells me that there is something fundamentally accelerated in humans. And whether that can just be put down to shamanic use of psychedelics, I don't know. I think that when you invoke, again, all of these various theologic stories, it becomes clear that something was interfacing with us. And perhaps at one point we were interfacing with them. And there was a communication and a relation that has since long degraded after, cataclysmic outreaches and.
I think the evolution that came out of psychedelics and primitive man was the escape from the barbaric nature of our roots.
Right.
I don't think it's necessarily the development of the human brain.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's probably
Communal
a way
values
to,
and
well, also a way
societal.
to use the human brain with its primate background, but soften the ego.
Right. Yeah.
And endorse a feeling of community. And promote a feeling of community and love and the connectiveness that you get from psychedelics. So it will allow you to traverse the timelines between incredibly barbaric hunter-gatherers with stone-tipped tools to agrarian societies where people are all living together and cooperating, and it makes sense. But what doesn't make sense is the giant leap to being a human in the first place.
No.
It's kooky.
It is,
and
kooky.
It's in the Bible. At least it's in the Book of Enoch.
It's
that's
there.
The crazy part about it is that they literally describe what we're, and not just us. Many people have theorized. Have we been a product? Are we a product of genetic manipulation? Are we a product of accelerated evolution?
Well, again, my own experiences, I just feel like there is quite obviously a vast intelligence spectrum out there, in my opinion, and I think it goes beyond our own perception of space and time, and I think that there are likely things that can come in from realms that we just don't really believe are real, like the astral and even the realm of the imagination is an interesting thing. What is this place inside of our heads that we can instantaneously create anything we want, and all things, including everything on this table, once came from inside someone's mind? We are excretors of ideas into reality. We kind of render reality into something that nothing else does.